Gibran, who was a mystic himself, says the following: the deeper that sorrow crawls into your being, the more joy you can contain. The mystics know sorrow, but they often express joy to the rest of us. This is short, and I will repeat it. Gibran says, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. The mystics know sorrow, but they often express joy to the rest of us. I thank you very much for inviting me to speak on one of my favorite subjects, mysticism and mystics. I have visited you here several times, and I find a lot of spirit, whether you would spell the word with a small s or a capital S. It is a fine place to be. A personal preamble before the technicalities of mysticism. I am not a mystic. I have studied briefly under 4 real mystics. I see myself as a 94-year-old seeker still working to grow to a higher level of maturity. But my seeking in my early life was focused on raising kids and on getting the next position at DuPont. Then at about age 50, my curiosity blossomed, and there was a big shift toward interest in psychology, philosophy, and poetry. I wrote my first ever poem at age 50 and termed my booklet of poetry, Waking Up Late. I became very interested in mystics and mysticism for 2 main reasons. First, the small community of mystics are models for growing to a higher level of maturity. Second, their work is helping us to grow up and reduce a larger danger we face. If you look at this chart here, you will see that over time, the collective maturity of humanity is increasing very slowly. But technology, this red curve, is moving very rapidly and getting to be a greater and greater problem. The thing that helps are the small community of mystics who are working on improving all of our maturity. What do you think is at the very tip of that curve of technology? Anyone want to guess? AI, artificial intelligence. We have enjoyed it a lot as it's grown up, but we have yet to see its downside. We are quite smart in developing new things, but we often do not have the wisdom to use those things wisely. Before defining mysticism, I want to introduce you to 5 mystics and tell you how they got there and what they did. You're already familiar with some of them, perhaps all of them. 2 women, 3 men, 3 from long ago, and 2 still living today. Joan of Arc, Florence Nightingale, Thomas Merton, Richard Rohr, and David White. Joan of Arc and Florence Nightingale were transformed over time by voices which they heard, which they were convinced came directly from the divine. Merton, already a Catholic priest, was transformed almost instantly on a street corner in Kentucky, where he looked and saw the people and said, "I love each of these people." He went even further and said, "Actually, I love all people everywhere." Richard Rohr was transformed gradually by meditation and prayer. David White was transformed by a near-death experience while hiking in the Himalayas. All of them did things once they were transformed to being mystics that were helpful to mankind and helped others grow to higher maturity. The UU community has its share of mystics. Folks like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller. And there are currently formal UU communities pursuing spiritual and mystical experiences. If you're interested, just check Google and you will find them. Perhaps some are close to here, for all I know. So who qualifies as a mystic? A mystic is a person who can perceive or experience the divine and absolute reality directly, not through other means, but directly. They have a high level of maturity and a deep capacity to love. The person sees the divine as living in each one of us, in fact. If you look at two different kinds of religion, you will find that the mystic is pursuing religion 601, not religion 101. And I will illustrate the difference in those two religions. This is a chocolate bar, and imagine that you've never tasted chocolate. But I'm going to help you with that problem, because I'm going to give you the exact chemical formula for chocolate. Your laugh suggests that you get the point. Another example, this is a map of Florida, and you can have as many of these maps as you like, but you will never taste orange juice nor feel the sand in your toes. Again, this is like having religion 101 and not 601. I actually took the pains this morning to look up what UU people believe, and they're beautiful statements, but if not dealt with prayerfully or meditatively and brought into the person directly into their soul, it is no more value than that map or that particular formula for chocolate. So we need personal practice to grow beyond religion 101 and to move toward being a mystic. Mysticism can also be defined as the art of union with reality. The mystic is the person who has attained the union in greater or lesser degree and who aims at and believes in such attainment. Mysticism may be looked upon as the final term, the active expression of power latent in the whole race. Very few people pass through life without having an wow or aha experience, which is a beginning toward mysticism. And in fact, I believe that if we did a survey, we would find that practically everyone here has had such an experience in their life. Record those, maybe even write a poem, which I will share with you later, that will help you to use those to grow over time. The mystical consciousness has the power of lifting those who possess it to a place of reality, which no struggle, no cruelty can disturb the certitude of peace. No catastrophe can wreck. This does not mean that the mystic is free of pain, but the pains do not defeat him or her. Most of the roots for becoming a mystic are the same things that anyone would undertake to grow toward higher maturity. Examples: meditation, prayer, personal reflection. Practice of what I call I-thou interactions. That means that I have interacted with another person so closely that it's an aha or a wow moment. Let me give you an example. I'm carried away by a particularly good performance of the Messiah. It comes into my body and I am one with the music for a few moments. The symphony is over. I turn to my friend and I say, "That is the best Messiah I ever heard." What do you think has happened? I have changed the Messiah into an object. It is no longer an I-thou experience. I-thou experiences will help each of us grow to higher maturity toward becoming mystical. Love is very important in the whole scheme of becoming a mystic. I like very much the story of the skin horse and the velveteen rabbit, and I'm going to use that a little bit. "Real isn't how you're made," said the skin horse. "It's the thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time. Not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are really real, you do not mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" he asked, "or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That is why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things do not matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly except to people who do not understand." The next thing one can do to grow is to do some form of therapy, either body work or psychological. Personally, I have done several years of such, and it was very important in transforming me from just being a DuPonter to being a broader person. Next, work with a skilled person who can analyze your dreams, because dreams really have a message for us if we can discern it, and it's not always easy to do. Becoming a mystic is generally a gradual process over time, but there are examples of people who have become mystical in almost instant time. I'll give you one example. Rufus Jones, was a Quaker mystic, is puzzling over what to do with his life. He does not know what to do. And he's walking one day in the mountains, and he says the following: "Suddenly I felt the walls between the visible and the invisible grow thin, and the eternal seemed to break through into the world where I was. I saw no flood of light, I heard no voice, but I felt as though I were face to face with a higher order of reality than that of the trees or mountains. I went down on my knees there in the woods with the same feeling of awe which compelled men earlier to take their shoes off their feet. A sense of mission broke in on me, and I felt like I was being called to a well-defined task in life, which I then and there dedicated my whole life to." Excuse me. So moving toward mysticism is by intimate interactions with the inner self, as in meditation, or by I-thou interactions with another person, a group of persons, or the arts or nature. I have been personally graced with several interactions that had a mystical flavor at least. I usually preserve them in a poem so that I will be able to keep the thought later. I will share two of those poems with you now. The first one is pretty short. It's called Sacred Resonance, and this actually happened. Finishing, she pulled up the warm blanket. Her words, "Take your time, Jean." Beyond those words, there was a message following this caring massage. Utter relaxation, deep peace, suspended in a small, eternal now. If her words had been, "Jean, you have one breath before your death," then, replacing a long history of fear, I would simply have said to her, "Thank you." The second poem was with a group of monks led by Thich Nhat Hanh, who's no longer with us and is a great mystic himself. This is one that's a little longer, but it makes the point of a near mystical experience. It's called Silent Dinner. Several hundred eating silently, Buddhist monks robed in dignity, faces saying peace, love, serenity. Prayer hands blessing the food. One monk peels an egg carefully, mindfully, as if it were a great white pearl. Another helps a child get a spoon. Transaction completed, they exchange smiles and prayer hands. A bell rings. It's a silent moment. Breath is okay 3 times, but then stop for a moment, even breathing. Come back to self, then continue eating and breathing in silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever these folks do later, sacred energy washes this place with goodness. I am deeply touched. I suggest that you pay attention to your aha or wow moments and record them, perhaps even in a poem. So if you do so, you are on the track to growing toward higher maturity. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you the pleasure and growth that come from I, thou, and AhHa moments. Thank you.